Welcome to our weekly immigration podcast. We cover the week's news in immigration here in the United States and try and hit those points for you so you can get it all right here. Today we're going to talk about a little bit about H-1Bs and what the outlook for H-1Bs looks for 2022, really hitting some of the past trends and see what's coming. We're also going to look at job shortages. That's another topic that we're seeing in immigration all the time. And of course we'll follow up with some viewer questions as well as some anecdotal stories about what's going on here at the office. All right, let's kick it out. So the Biden administration has a very big immigration plan that they submitted, and parts of that plan are very, very important. But right now, we're waiting on legal changes for the Biden immigration plan to come through. Parts of that plan do address the H-1B visa, including increasing numbers, as well as some other plans for the H-1Bs. But what we should really do is look backwards at the H-1Bs really quickly, because there's some things here that need to be very clear as this Biden administration begins to address the H-1B program. And the first thing that I think I want to say is, number one, we have seen the end of the regulations that were proposed by Trump to come into effect. So right now, the most important thing that you should note about the Biden administration is that the new rules that were proposed for the H-1B lottery, for salaries and wages, have all been wiped off the table and are no longer in effect. What that means is we have the H-1B lottery coming up in March, and it will be a lottery the way we knew it last year, and it will be based upon master's degree and bachelor's degree as they are given out. Some facts that I think are very important when looking at H-1Bs is looking at some of the basic precepts or concepts in the H-1B. Number one is the median wage. Now, the median annual compensation for approved H-1Bs in FY 2020 was $101,000. This is actually a very big deal because a lot of people talk about the H-1B program as a program where individuals are underpaid or are cutting wages in the U.S. job market. The simple fact is there are actually a ton of academic and governmental studies that show that H-1B visa holders are paid the same or more than their counterpart, meaning U.S. employees in the United States. Keep in mind that U.S. law requires employers to pay a set wage. Now, that wage is set based upon the industry and the county, and it's from the Department of Labor. Doing H-1Bs over 20 years, I can tell you that those wages are competitive and generally hit the numbers that you see in private industry. Another thing to keep in mind is on top of wages, U.S. employers are required to pay the legal fees and other fees associated with an H-1B. These fees can be anywhere from $5,000 to, if you're doing a green card, up to $30,000. Green card fees range $10,000, $15,000, and that does not even include some of the fees paid to the government for different kinds of premium processing or expedited processing, which can cost $2,500. So on top of the actual salary, competitive salary that they're paying, employers must pay the wage that is set, and they must also pay these filing fees and governmental legal fees. So you can see that the National Foundation for American Policy has always cited these actual fees are indications of a demand for skilled workers, because why would an employer engage in hiring highly paid employees and paying their legal fees on top of that when they have adequate staffing here in the United States? On top of that, what we've seen at the end of the last year is a huge vacancy in jobs. The fact is there are listings as of December of almost 1.5 million jobs in the computer occupations. Now, we grab this data, we'll put some information up from some organizations that study industries to see how trends are going for jobs in different industries. And right now, the computer jobs in the computer tech industries, we're seeing an increase in demand and only seeing about 50,000 or 55,000 new H-1B positions requested per year. So that means that out of all the jobs available, the H-1B only hits that 55,000 person mark when there are more than 1.5 million jobs available now, a very, very small percentage of the job market out there. Overall, when we look at the trends that we can see in terms of the H-1B program, it really is a program that, when followed, does support American workers and really takes a very, very small slice out of the jobs available in the U.S. market today. In this next story, we're talking about some dramatic changes in immigration that have come about over the last few years. And most specifically, very recently we've seen this huge trend that happened during the pandemic, and it's called the Great Resignation, where people of all ages and occupations walked away from their jobs and, put themselves in a position to take different kinds of employment, either home-based or remote, and really change their careers. But this has also led to a shortage of workers, a high demand for new labor in positions all across different industries has shown itself throughout this pandemic. And the part that matters to us, what we see is the net international migration figures have been falling over a period of 5 years. So that means from 2016 to now, we've seen a dramatic decline in the amount of migration specifically for jobs in the United States. And so even though we see this change with the pandemic, we also know that we've had this trend going, and the pandemic really highlighted some of these dramatic changes we've seen in migration. And in all those declines, since 2016, there have been millions of more immigrants in the country today if migration had kept a steady pace. So the truth is, what we're seeing is a decline in migration, both skilled and unskilled workers, and we're seeing that happen over 5 years before the pandemic even kicked in. The last decade has been the slowest rate of growth, and that also includes in terms of birth rate, what we're seeing in terms of workers entering the workforce. So when you look at all the kinds of jobs that we have out there, we've got some of these charts which show very clearly where foreign workers are fitting in and what percentage they are in the U.S. workforce. So for example, a great chart that we're putting up would be one that shows in the service industry. When you look at the service industry, the SEIU is a very popular labor organization, and that means workers in the hotel industries and throughout all the service, hospitality, and restaurant industries. You see that foreign-born workers are actually taking up 20% of the jobs in the service industry. And that itself tells you that while you might have a higher expectation and you might believe that some of these jobs are all foreign workers, it's actually just a smaller percentage. And you can see that these industries have taken big hits during the pandemic, and we're seeing changes in some of those numbers. So, for instance, foreign-born workers are more likely to work in service jobs than native-born workers. And among the foreign-born, 21% in the service industry are compared to 14% of the native-born population. Now, and this is all from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. What we're saying here is there's a declining trend in terms of immigration. We're seeing less people migrating to the United States. That was exacerbated in the pandemic. And when you look at the job industry and what's out there, the truth is there are many jobs available, and there are skilled, unskilled jobs that could go to Americans as well as foreign-born workers. To support some of these numbers that we're showing you here is the simple fact that immigration lawyers and in the immigration industry, the amount of phone calls we get from U.S. workers, employers, trying to find, and I'm talking about unskilled labor. I'm talking in the fields of carpentry, construction, in all sorts of simple service-type industries. You're seeing a high demand. Electricians, plumbers, you name it. People are looking for more people. This has to change, and we do need some policy changes from the Biden administration to address this. Number one, what we need to do is see a change in the backlog for EB workers, and we need to see a change in the H-2A, H-2B programs, which are also short-term programs that may need to be expanded to cover some of these skilled and unskilled worker positions. Finally, we need to see some overhaul of the H-1B system. At this point, it doesn't make a lot of sense. H-1Bs do show, has been a program that has problems, and everyone always focuses on the fraud. But the truth is, the H-1B program provides growth to the middle class in the United States. Many of these jobs, the salaries are 50, 60, 70, and as we cited today and earlier, salaries in the $100,000 range. Those are middle class jobs. Those individuals buy homes, they reside in our communities, and they contribute to the United States. The H-1B program itself is actually a growth program for the middle class in the United States, and we do need to see the Biden administration make some changes. We'll be following that and coming back to you this year with more information on that. Stay tuned. Okay, so I want to tell you guys a little story today about one of our success stories because we get them all the time and we sort of forget to pass them along. I had a client who has been in the United States for over 25 years, almost 30 years, and he has been working in retail his whole life. He's a store manager for a small restaurant chain, and about 6 or 7 years ago, he was kidnapped at work, taken to the store in the middle of the night so these robbers could rob the store. It's been a long journey, 6 years in total where he hired our offices, but we finally got him his U visa just last week. He was really happy. It's been years in the making, and he's had very difficult times going through a deportation process. But of course, he's been promoted 3 or 4 times. He's a store manager now. His employer is thrilled and happy that he's finally got his official paperwork. He's had a work permit for some time, but now he's got a U visa, and it's put him in a really solid position to be here. We've got a story on our website. If you want to check it out, you want to hear directly from him. But if you've ever been the victim of a crime, or you have a friend or family member who has, and they're a foreign-born or a foreign national, the U visa program is a pretty good way to get your stuff, get your paperwork all fixed up. Check out our website. You'll see some info on his case. All right, in this segment, we're going to answer some questions from you guys out there. We got Ayaka Mishito asked, is there a switch from F1 to student visa to an employer visa after graduation? All right, so very basic question. Simple answer is yes, and there's 2 chances for you. Number 1, F1 students are eligible for OPT normally. It's called post-completion OPT. We have a bunch of videos on it. Check our channel for that, but also check your international student office for that. Changing to a work visa is the H-1B. The H-1B has a season. That means it's every year at the beginning of the year. It has a lottery in March of each year, or March or April. And the initial steps are going to be looking at whether you're eligible for an H-1B. Now, that's going to be very, very important. You need to have an employer, you need to have a U.S. degree, and those things need to make sense and match. You should talk to an attorney about that right away. You got to register for the program and register for the lottery. You got to prepare documents, get things organized. And of course, you need to have your employer on board to sign the forms, get things done, and send it off. That's a very bare bones, basic overview of what an H-1B is. There's a lot of timing requirements. Again, lottery in March usually, which means you should be ready in February and January to get ready for your H-1B. So if you're out there and you graduated recently, talk to an attorney, get ready now. Give us a call. We're always happy to help with H-1Bs. All right, I've got another question from StarsNight98. Can you travel during OPT? The answer to that, short answer is yes, you can if you have a valid visa. An approved OPT application gives you an I-20 and an EAD. Those are your 2 documents that show you have F1 status as OPT. You need to travel with an F1 visa. So your F1 visa must be valid, and of course you need your I-20 and proof that you're working. Sometimes we recommend you take maybe even a paycheck or something to show that you're currently employed if you're going to travel during OPT. All right? And our final question is from Charka Khan. Nurse in Germany, what are my options to get an H-1B visa? All right. Nurses in the United States do need to go through the process with the CGFNS, which is the Certified Foreign Nurses exam. You have to take the NCLEX and pass the exam and do a visa screen. So that's the very basic beginning. You got to start with the NCLEX, okay? Beyond that, your questions about the H-1B visa, there are very specific nurse fields that qualify for an H-1B. And those fields would be the nurse practitioner, okay? And that's usually a licensed nurse practitioner with a master's degree. You can look at the ER nurses, nurse anesthesiologist, and some critical care nurses. Now, there's very few nursing fields that qualify for an H-1B. It's not just any field. You can't be a general RN, and you can't just be a nurse working in a clinic. The fact of the matter is, nurses qualify in the United States as RNs with an associate degree, which is a 2-year degree, and the H-1B requires a 4-year degree. So the visa itself, the H-1B, requires 4 years, so that's going to make the nursing job and your ability to get a visa dependent upon your qualifications and some other very, very specific things. If you got questions about actually getting a job, about being an H-1B nurse, give us a call, do a consult with me. I'll run you through some of this and get you started on your way. All right, that's it for now. We do have a lot going on in immigration. We are heading towards H-1B season. If you know somebody that's interested in H-1Bs, give us a call. If you're an employer out there that wants to know more about this, you can also talk to us. We do help small companies all the time get situated for their H-1Bs and bringing new employees on board. Hope you're well out there. Stay safe. Thanks a lot. Bye.